Alright guys, um, here we're going to talk about jQuery, and I'll start just quickly to go over the page that I already set up just as an example for your final project, and something that we can kind of show the examples right there on the page for jQuery. So here quickly I have several sections on the site. The first one is the navigation, and we looked at that last time. It's a basically bootstrap navigation with several links, my brand. The next section is my hero section, where I'm loading the full page background image. And again, we'll do this page next time, next week. So like we'll start it from scratch, just to help you out with your final project if you're still struggling with certain things. But right now we'll focus on jQuery, so I went ahead and I built the page ahead of a time. So here in our hero section we have h1, which will be our title, and we have a button here that doesn't do anything right now, but we'll do some JavaScript that it will react. We'll do some jQuery that will react on a click of this button. So the next section is this little section with the image and some text, and you can see that the rest of the page it's inside that container bootstrap class that adds empty space left and right, and kind of centers the content in the middle of the page. And this section here has two columns. One is a little shorter, a less width, and the other one is with more width. So we use one for the image and second one for the text. And here we're starting our blog, and we can see that our titles have separate different font than our subtitle, than our rest of the text. So let's see, let's talk about what is jQuery. Excuse me. So jQuery is a JavaScript library, which means it's a collection of a lot of JavaScript written already for us. So jQuery gives us some classes predefined, and those some functions, and we can use those functions in our code to easier work with JavaScript. Which means if we use some function that it's already inside jQuery, we can do the same function just with plain JavaScript, but we will have to write more lines, and jQuery helps us with that. That has already predefined functions we can use right away for quicker and faster work. Also, it's very nice and easy for selecting elements on the page, adding actions like on click, on hover, and there are a lot of plugins they're built on top of jQuery, and one of them we'll use here. It's called Slideshow, similar to Bootstrap's carousel that we looked up last time. So how we add jQuery to our page is the same as we were adding some other scripts before, and you can go to code.jquery.com, and here you can see the newest version, which is at this time jQuery core 3.3.1, and you can use good version to start is minified. So slim and slim minified are is the version that has some stuff taken out, but minified will have everything that jQuery has, and it will be minified, which means it will all the empty spaces, lines, comments will be taken out. So we would like to click on that, and we can basically just copy this script and put it on our website. But with Bootstrap last class, we already did 3 scripts on the bottom of the page, if you remember, and one of them is jQuery. So since we put Bootstrap last class in our page, we have jQuery already included. So we can now use jQuery on our page. So let's quickly go over how the sections of the site are set up in our HTML. Just quick overview. So first one, we have a navigation. So inside our body tag, which is holds everything on our page, we have navigation section, and this is one of the examples from Bootstrap website, and I just customized it a little bit. I want it to be dark, I want it to be fixed on top, and I changed some of the links. So you already done this part, and you can experiment with the Bootstrap navigations. Pretty easy stuff. You basically copy and paste the basic example, and then you start adding and removing classes that you don't need, and you can add your own classes also if you want to override some of the stylings. So with this, we have our navigation ready, which is mobile responsive. If we would go ahead and if I turn on inspector elements, I can click on the to this toggle to open the device toolbar. So I click and it will show me how my site looks like on mobile screen. I did not work on I will have to make this font a little smaller on mobile, but here I want to show you that the menu navigation is already Bootstrap responsive, because Bootstrap is built with mobile first approach. Of course, you should style and make this navigation prettier. This is not theme of our class right now, so you can style it the way you like. This is just for example, so style was not a priority here. Okay, so the next section is this big image. I like to call it hero section, and I'm loading a background, full screen background image, as we already went through before. Here I have h1, which is my title, and a button. So we can take a look at that section. Here, after our navigation, our main section starts, which is holding all our section on the page. So there is the section called hero, and inside I have another div that I called hero title, where I wrapped inside. I have my h1 and I have my button. So this is my hero section setup, HTML markup. So the next section here is my I can hover over this, so you can see on the, if I hover over the section in my inspector, I will see how it's set up. So I have my section, which is container fluid Bootstrap class that goes all across the page. Inside I have container that will be in the middle of the page, and then I have row is a required parent div. So inside the row we can use call classes from Bootstrap. So inside the row I'm using call medium 4 for the image, and I'm using call medium 8 for this text, which means from mediums with screen size and up, hold this part in 4/4 of the 12 column grid, and then the rest of it will be 8. And if it's the size is smaller than 12, then we can see it will go to, if the width of the screen is less than medium, then our divs will go by default to 12, which will bring them to wrap in the columns. And that's about our middle section, and our last section is just basically another section that it's wrapped inside a container again, so we can keep it in the middle of the page with a space on the sides, and then inside we have h2 with some paragraph, and we have h3 which we use for subtitle with some paragraph. Excuse me. So this is our HTML markup, and with this let's start on jQuery. Alright, so let's start with the jQuery. So we already, like I said, we loaded it, the jQuery script with our Bootstrap scripts. It's required for Bootstrap to work, so we know that our jQuery works because our Bootstrap is working. But to make sure that we can use it in our JavaScript, we need our own JavaScript now, so we can start writing the script there. So inside our JS, we created main.js file, which will be our main JavaScript. So to start with, jQuery has a syntax, and it's always starting with the $, and it's basically you with jQuery you would select element you want to interact with, and then after that the functions or the actions starting with dot, and you will see what I mean when we start. So the first, let's say we want our script to run every time the page is fully loaded. So we can do that by writing $, and we say, okay, we want when our document, which means our page in this case, get fully loaded, so whenever it's ready we want to run the next function, and you open the curly braces, and that's all we need to do for it to run this function every time our page is loaded. So we wanna say that we wanna run this when page is loaded, because we cannot select element that are not HTML elements, they're not loaded beforehand. So that's why our JavaScript jQuery is loading at the end, because this is where it's loading after all the elements on the page are loaded. So the first basic thing you want to do to know that something is running, so again, all our code will be inside this function, which starts here and ends here. So let's just quickly do something that is very basic in JavaScript, which means log something in a console of our browser, and that's in console.log, and then whatever you write here, it will show up in a console. Hi, jQuery is loaded. Okay, so if this shows up in our console when we reload the page, with this that means that our jQuery, which indicates this $, and this function is running every time the page is loaded. So let's before we can see it, of course we need to include this main JavaScript in our page. So how we do that is basically just linking it like everything else, like our CSS, same way, but since it's script, we need to start with the script tag, and then the source is our location to our script. So we start with $, because it's in a relation to our index.html JS folder is in the same level, you see, and then inside the JS folder we have our main.js script, and you see Visual Code is helping us out here. And if we save this file now, our JavaScript is loaded, and you can see that I'm loading it at the end of the page. If I want to use jQuery inside my main.js script, I need to load my script after the jQuery is loaded. If I put my script above jQuery, this will not work, because when my script is loading, jQuery is not loaded yet, so I cannot use $. So I hope that makes sense. So with that, let's save our page and see if, of course, I'm using live server, so my page is reloading automatically. But to see the console, I need to open my inspector tools, and I click on console, and here is where I see that every time I refresh the page, my script gets loaded, and the text gets logged into the console. So this tells us, and you can see that it coming from main.js file on line 3. So we know that our JavaScript is hooked up to index.html, and also jQuery is loaded inside, so we can use it. So let's see what we can do with this jQuery. The way you select elements is usually by their ID. You would like to have ID on the elements that you wanna interact with, because IDs are unique to the elements. Classes may show up on several places, but IDs are one. ID is one ID, right? So we wanna select one element only for this. So let's see what we can do. So I would like, for example, when I click on this button here, I want this to get a class animate from animate.css. So if you remember, animate.css is the library for the pre-built animations that we already used. So let's say I want to use those. If I click on download animate, I can download the file, but I think we already have it in our from last time. So let's see, in our SCSS inside the vendor, we have the animate.css SCSS, which we downloaded last time, and then in our main.css we are importing it. So this gets compiled into our style.css, and we can use animate on our files. So let's say let's go back to animate real quick and see which class we want to use. Oops, sorry. So I would like to use maybe we said that we want our element to go away. So once we click the button, we want this title to go away. So we will use something for the exit, which is, let's say, fade out right. You see, it's just sliding to the right slowly. It has transition, and we already looked at that. So the class is fade out right. So if we just simply go ahead and add this class to our title, animated. So we know that animated is the required class that we need to put, and then the second class is the unique one of the animation we want to use. So we say fade out right. We save that and go back to our page. If we refresh, our element loads and then it goes away. So obviously that's not what we want to do. We want our title to be here, and then when we click hide me, to come in, to go away, right? So just writing the classes in HTML, you see, we can just do something. We can add delay, but we want this to happen on action, which means we won't have any classes on this element when the page gets loaded. So our element will be here. So now we want to create an action with using jQuery. When we click this button, we want to add these two classes to our element, and that means that element will automatically animate. So let's see how we can do that. So we go index our page, and we want to use jQuery to select this element, our title. Before that, sorry, we want to select the button first. So our button has ID of btn-animate. So we say when we want to select elements using jQuery, it's starting with the $, and then in parentheses you have quotes, and then IDs start with pound, classes start with dot. It's the same like we do in CSS. So with this we are saying, okay, jQuery, find this element on the page, and once you find it, do this action, and our action will be on click, which means we can write it this way: dot on, that's a function, so means find this element, and then on, you select on what? On click, because you can put hover, you can put different things here. And then once you find this element, and if this element gets clicked, then run this function. Functions always has a parentheses open and closed in the back of it. Here some arguments can go. You'll learn that in JavaScript in your class, but it also can be without arguments. So with that, we open curly braces, and we write what do we want to happen once this element gets clicked. So we want to add animated classes to our title. So we want to see what the title ID is, so we can tell jQuery to find it. So our h1, our title, has ID title. So we go here and we say again, okay, jQuery, with $, we say we want to use jQuery for this, and inside the quotes we say, okay, jQuery, find element with this ID of title. And then what do we say we want to do? We want to add classes to that element, and the way you do it with the jQuery functions is add class. So our action here was on click, and in this case we say, okay, when you find this element, then add class, and then in parentheses you just say, in the quotes, you say what classes you want it to add. If you remember, our animation worked when we did animated, and then we did fade out right. That was our animate.css classes that we want to add. So I'm gonna cut this from here, and I'm gonna say, okay, when you find this title element, add these two classes. So now if I save this, let me just do this like that. So when our page gets loaded, this element will not have any classes. It will just be plain h1. It will stay there on the page, but jQuery will listen, and as soon as this element, which is our button, gets clicked, this function will load. So our title h1 element will get these two classes, and as soon as it gets those two classes, animate.css will run, and our element should go fade to the right. So with this saved, let's go and refresh the page. So you will see our h1. If we look at our inspector tool, our h1 doesn't have any classes, so it's empty, just class, because it doesn't have any. But if we click the button now, you see our h1 element got those classes, and as soon as it got the classes, it went away, because animate.css does that for us. So once again, we come to the page, there's nothing there, we click the button, and our element goes away. So let's add the same. We want also this button to go away, because now my page is just with the big button in the middle. That's not really nice, so I want to hide this button as well. So let's see what is our button class. It's called btn animate. So our btn animate, so we want to do the same thing inside this function. We can do a lot of stuff. Everything that we want to happen when this button gets clicked, we can just write here one after another functions. So we'll do the same thing for our button. So I'm gonna say, okay, jQuery, go and select the button with an ID of btn-animate, and again, that's our button ID. And then once you find that element, do the action add class, which adds class to this element, and we want to simply add the same ones, animated. And then let's say I want my button to fade on the left. I say this. So if you go to animate, fade out left should do this. So it does the opposite, then fade out right. So let's save. Once we click the button, we see that our button goes to the left and our title goes to the right. I'm not sure if this is what would fit in your project, but this is an example of action, simple, adding classes to the elements, and the classes coming, you're using classes from animation, animate.css, for example. You can add your own classes to the elements, some classes that you will style, your own styles. Maybe once you click the button, some image will get replaced, or the color will change, or there are endless things that you can do. Also, jQuery has a lot of plugins, which means a lot of, like this here is one plugin. You can create this as a function that is global, and then you can share with people, and if they put that function inside their page, this, if you have this, if they name their elements with these IDs, the same action will work. So those are plugins. It's just pre-built functionality for you, and you can research a lot jQuery plugins, and let's say there's a lot of sites and tutorials. You can use what is, like, you see how many, like 210 official jQuery image plugins here, but you have a lot of others. So Magnificent pop-up, click on that, you can see a lot of them have demos. So let's see, this one has demo. You can see single image lightbox, which means you have some images on your site, and once you click, it comes up like this. So this is done by jQuery. So you can read here and see how can you use this plugin on your page. Usually it's just by downloading this script, and if you have jQuery loaded in your page, underneath you add that script, and then you simply read the docs. What do you need to do in order to use it? So usually is you need to have certain container on your page, like one HTML element with specific class. It has to be this class, and then that's how you can start using those plugins. So I would show you one here. Let's say we want to use something, one plugin that is called slideshow. That means that it will kind of just swap some images here instead of have one static image. And let me see if I have I should have a link to this in our modules. So yes, we do. So in our modules documentation on our class, I have the link that I provided, and that's uh, link to this jQuery plugin called Cycle2. Simply just does the you have different ways of doing the slides, so you can slideshow, so you can slide, you can do maze, you can do some other stuff, flips and all that. So here you can read about it, you can see how to use it, and you can download it. So uh, you see, if you go to demos, you can have getting started, and here it shows you that you need to have jQuery first, and then you need to add this cycle2 script. So let's do that first. So let's copy this script here, go back to our HTML, and underneath our jQuery, or to be safe, you do it underneath our main JavaScript. Actually, that's alright. We can, in case we wanna change it with our main JavaScript, that means that it needs to be loaded in front of our JavaScript. But of course, because it's using jQuery, it needs to be loaded below the jQuery. So with that, if we save, we now have this JavaScript loaded on our page every time we refresh the page. So now if we go back to the documentation, we can see that we can use this slideshow by having one div that has to have a class of slideshow, or you can customize it, but the class, this parent div class slideshow has to be the one that holds the images. So you can customize to put some divs in front to wrap the whole thing. That's with your project and your HTML markup. But once you get to the images, your parent div that holds the images needs to have class of slideshow, and then you simply just put as many images as you want your slideshow to rotate through. So we can do this simple basic slideshow. So let's copy this here, put it in our page, and let's say instead of our figure image, which is our small little image here, instead of that we wanna put, we will delete that. I'll keep my classes, so my styling and the sizes are there. So we will put this cycle slideshow. So in order, because I wrote already styles for this, I've wrapped this also in a section with the class of slideshow, and this is just for my styling. So if you go and you look in my main.scss, I have a slideshow style somewhere here, probably, or maybe I'm not even doing anything with it. But it's good idea to maybe wrap that into your own class, so you can add styles in front of whatever already is coming with this jQuery. Okay, so now of course these sources will not be available on our site, so we need to use our images folder, and I have some images here already that I can use, and I'm going to use this block 1, 2 and 3, and you see they're all different sizes. That's why I'm styling them in our SCSS, and I will share this with I will put this on GitHub, and you will get the link in the description, in the not description but in the class module on our canvas, so you can go and find it and download it and look how it's done there. But we will do that again next class. So I already have the images prepared with our that correlates to my folder structure, so it looks at my images folder, and I added the two parameters, which is size. You can do this also in your classes, but just for this example I have them here with the images. So if I save that and go to my page, nothing will happen. Nothing that I described, right? So it starts with the default animation. So this is the default animation. If you're fine with it, it will just loop through the images with this little effect. But what I wanted to show you is, if you go back to that wherever that function was, tutorial was, where did I open it? I opened it on another. Okay, so here we can, once we add this parent div that has class cycle slideshow, we can add some parameters. We can, and they start with that data cycle, and there are different ones, and you can research here and see which ones do what, and it tells you here. So they're pretty self-explanatory. So if we do, for example, data cycle pause on hover equals true, that means that once we hover over our container, our images, the slideshow will stop. So you see, so it stops scrolling and it shows a little paused message here. That means maybe you're inside the slideshow, you can use maybe divs instead of the images, and or maybe the image has some text or something that you want people to can stop and look at it. Maybe data cycle speed, which it means how many milliseconds or how fast you want to these images to rotate. Maybe you want them smaller, maybe you want them faster. So the data cycle fx is scroll horizontally, which means scroll horizontally. If you put scroll vertically, it will go up and down, right? So it's pretty self-explanatory, and we can try to add a few of these parameters to our cycle slideshow class. So let's say I want it to scroll horizontally, so I'm gonna add this parameter. I'm getting those from the same page that we just looked there. So I don't want this to pause and hover, so I don't want the user to be able to stop the rotation of the images. I want them to keep going no matter what user is doing. And then I want it slightly faster than they were showing on an example on their site, so I want the cycle speed to be 100. And you can play with these numbers and find the one that you like for your particular project. So maybe you want slower, faster. So with this, I'm gonna save, go to our page, it's refreshed. See, it's not stopping on scroll, it's still going, and it stays a little bit. So it could have been that the smaller, yeah, it's 100, might be too fast or too slow. Again, you will play with the numbers and see which one goes. And what else we can do? We can also one of the maybe most used jQuery functions is hide, and it goes like dot hide and dot show. So let's say instead of adding those classes when we click the button, so I'm just gonna comment this out. Let's say when I click the button, I want my title to disappear, but just to disappear without any animation. So I would do dot hide, right? So now I'm saying when I click the button, jQuery find this element with the ID title and just hide it. So let's refresh our page, click, and it's hidden. But it deletes the container, so it removes the container that holds that h1, which means that our button now went straight up because there is no container in between to keep it in the middle. With the animate, the element would slide out, but the container will still be there. With this, the container gets removed completely from the page, so that will change your HTML markup. So you have to play with that. The same way, let's say in our main.scss, actually in our base, we wanna say we wanna give to our title, we want to say, okay, display none, which means be hidden when the page is loaded. And also we want to do the same to our button. Actually the button, no, because we want to click it. So now our title will not be loaded, and as you can see, it's not there. But once that's not really, I can't really, let's add some, maybe let's add some margin on the top for our button, so it gets pulled a little bit down. We can actually click it, because it was okay, I need to spell it right. Margin, oh man. Alright, so margin top. Okay, so now it's visible for us to click. I mean, we can obviously adjust this better. It just gets behind the navigation class because I have this fixed top, and navigation has different z index that comes from Bootstrap. So we don't do any CSS work right now on this example, so I won't bother with that right now. So now I can click the button, and we said once we click the button, we wanna, in this case, we want to show the title. So this will basically just change this display none for our title to display block. So let's refresh. Once we click, it brings our, so you see, you can use basically basic jQuery functions to show and hide, but you can also use class to add classes to that. So it just has a little transition or animation coming in and out. It's kind of nicer. jQuery has something similar. So instead of, let's say, just saying show, you can say fade in, and then you can say how slow it's gonna fade in. So if you say fade in 300, if I remember correctly, then this should make it to fade in, which will add a little bit transition, and it will last for 300 milliseconds. So you see, there is no sliding, but there is a fading. So let's say we wanna, maybe better example, if our title is already there, so we're gonna remove this display none, and we're gonna say once we click the button, we want this to fade out for, let's say, half a second, which is 500 milliseconds. So now when we reload the page, our title is here. If we click the button, it slowly fades out, but again it removes the whole container. So that might be one of the most common or very common functions that you use. Again, also, if you remember, when we use animate, we can set delays. So we can say, okay, when the page gets loaded, animate this element but delay it for like 2 seconds. So the page gets loaded, 2 seconds later this animation happens. And basically that's actually written most than likely using jQuery functions or JavaScript functions at the end. and jQuery has one pre-built for us that it's called set timeout. So let's look at this example really quick here. So what we want to do, we want to say, okay, after let's hide both elements. So we're gonna hide our title, and we're gonna hide our title and our button at the beginning of the page, and then we'll say after let's see what we want to say. We want to say maybe after half a second, fade in both elements. Let's say we want to say that. So how are we gonna do that? So first we need, of course, to hide our elements. So we're gonna find our hero title, which is our complete section, our container that holds both h1 and the button. So that's our hero title, and here we have the button, and it's this display none, it's commented out. That was for other examples, right? So actually we need to just hide the hero title. Oh, so display none. Let's save and check it out. So this now, since that hero title container holds both elements, they both disappear. Everything inside that container disappears, right? On every page load, this will not load. But we want to now use jQuery to say, okay, after 2 seconds, fade in those two elements. Let's say you're not using animated CSS on your page or new project at all, so this is the way, using jQuery to do that. So let's try to do that. So we say, okay, once the page is loaded, which is this full functions from here to here, everything we write inside, in between this and this, this and this, it will be executed after the page is loaded. So here is our other, we can leave this part of this function for the clicking button, it doesn't matter, but we want to show the button first. So the way you use set timeout function in jQuery, you can say set timeout, that's the name of the function, and that's already predefined in jQuery. And then inside parentheses we want to say we want to run this function again, then the function keyword, and then open and close brackets, and then after that we open curly braces, and again Visual Studio Code is helping us with some formatting and stuff. So whatever we write inside here, between this and this, where the function starts and ends, it will happen on the timeout. So we want to say, okay, jQuery, go and find my element with ID title, which is my h1, and fade in and last like 200 milliseconds. So that we already saw how that works. We want to fade in, and we want to fade it that fast or slow, right? So it's gonna last 200 milliseconds. And then I also want to bring in my button. So my button ID, as we saw before, is BT and animate, and I want to do the same thing here. So it's just gonna show up, but it's gonna last 200 milliseconds. It's not gonna show up right away. So now we have set timeout, but we need to say what is the timeout, how long we want to wait until these two things happens, until our function executes. So the way you write that is just at the end of your function, which starts with curly braces and ends with curly braces, and then here you say comma, and you say milliseconds, how long you want that to wait. So I want it to wait half a second, which is 500 milliseconds, and that's all you do. So now you have delay. So you set timeout of 500 milliseconds, and after 500 milliseconds your function will run. So let's see how this will do. So if we refresh our page, oh, that's my it's not gonna work because we did display none on our hero title, which holds both elements. So instead of doing, I cannot show I cannot show the title and the button because they are inside the container who is hidden. So basically I just want to go then, and instead of these two I'm just gonna use, okay, find me the element hero, which is hero title, but you see I'm using dot now because my element has a class, right? It has a class. ID is a £, class is the dot sign. So I want jQuery to find this element with the class of hero title and fade it in 200 milliseconds. So let's refresh the page. It should wait 500 or half a second and then load slowly, fade them in. Let's see, maybe you want that on your page. Maybe you want, when somebody comes to your page, you give it a little bit of time and the title loads or the image loads or something like that. So these are just examples of jQuery and how you can use it. So we use jQuery for the actions, we use it for the setting timeout, and we use it for the slideshow. And just search jQuery plugins all over. You can find thousands of jQuery functions, jQuery plugins, and we have I listed a lot in the some of them, not a lot, but some of them in a module. So you can just go there and find one that you use, and basically they're all similar way like we looked here in the images group. So these are kind of by section. There are a lot of animations, right? So you click on one of these and then go to documentation, and they usually give you examples here. How can you use it? And just read through it really quick. So this one was easy, right? We just had to put the container with certain classes, and that was all. So yeah, I mean, just look through that and try to use. So first I want you to check that you have jQuery already in your page, which you should. If you're using Bootstrap, you have to have it, but if you don't use Bootstrap, then you will have to load it from the jQuery's CDN page. Then you will have to make sure that you have your document ready function, which means wrap all the functions that you will write. They need to be inside this function, so they get executed when you make sure this way that they will get executed when the page is loaded. So then you can play with add classes. Also you can remove classes the same way. So you would just do, instead of here we said when we want to click the button you want to add class. If you want to remove those classes, you just do remove class. So let's say one class would, you have the class that style that holds the styling for some element that you want it to be red. So with this you can remove that red class and it will take some or you can add after this some other class, or you can endless possibilities what you can do with adding, removing classes, and your classes can hold transitions or colors or any styling that you write in your regular CSS. So you can have to either add or remove classes, depends on what you want to do. Then try to create a on click function like this, like we did here. And then try to figure out where you can use one of the set timeout, so some element to either fade in or fade out, or you can even put to add class after some time. So this will add the class to the title after 500 milliseconds, right? So if we remove this so our title is loaded, you can see that now after half a second these two classes will get added to our title and it will animate and fade out. So let's check it out. So let's go here, we refresh our page, half a second later, animate kicks in because we add classes and it goes away. So that's the same effect that it's already pre-built in anime.css with you adding delay there. And then try to set up this image slideshow. Of course you can put the slideshow to be over your background, to be full screen, and then you have your full screen images to slide left and right, or you can have small images like this, or maybe half a page, or depends on your design and what you want to do. So you can try to implement this slideshow plugin, which you need to load. You have the link of the cycle 2 plugin, jQuery plugin. You have the link. Basically you just select this link and add it to your site, to your page, and then yeah, you will have it on your page. Cool. So next class we'll work on how to deploy or how to use GitHub to host our page that we are building here. So basically we will have our final projects next week. We will set it up to be public to the internet using GitHub, so you don't have to pay anything that way, but it's a cool way to start and actually put maybe your portfolio online while you're getting something more serious and while you're building your project after this class. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions, send emails or Slack, and you have all the documents in the module, and see you next week.